We hate to bring you the bad news, but after the crazy cliffhanger that finished Season 4, we probably won't see any more of Westworld. Honestly, what a painful way to leave us all hanging. Just a few days ago, HBO decided to cancel the show after its 4th season, despite how people couldn't stop talking about this sci-fi masterpiece. So let's look into why there won't be a Season 5 of the series. First off, the show lost its popularity. Ever since it debuted on HBO in 2016, this TV show was among their most popular ones. Nolan and Joy, the show's creators, had still been discussing the idea of another season in mid-October. The futuristic thriller set in a high-technology, Wild West-themed park had won numerous prizes. One of the actors in the show, Thandie Newton, even received a Primetime Emmy Award back in 2018. This leaves no doubt in our heads about how good the team behind the show was. After all the work they had put into the highly complex plot and characters of the show, we can imagine how hard it must have been to be forced to give it up. In their mind, they always saw a 5th coming, and that was going to be the final season of the show. They were in discussions with the network all this time, but as we can see, it didn't work out. The show simply wasn't bringing the ratings and viewership that they had all been hoping for. With a budget of over $100 million, everybody wanted to see stellar remarks. But the audiences reacted in the exact opposite way. Even the enthusiastic die-hard fans of the show were dissatisfied with how it had progressed over the last 4 seasons. The first 2 managed to blow everyone's mind away with the unique storyline, but HBO realized that fans were just not interested in the show anymore. A response like that does ultimately lead to the show's cancellation. Moving on, why did Westworld come to its downfall? We were all witnessing the steady decline in the series ratings, and while they kept it running for as long as they could, the investors were going to lose their patience at some point. Also, we feel that when you've seen things go so well, it sorta sucks when they become stale. Westworld had seized on the idea of giving the audience an entire cinematic experience from the start. With shifting sets and individuals reborn in a whole new persona, the film's amazing cast and crew received more than 50 nominations for Emmys. The show had begun with an insane estimate of about 12 million viewers in the first season. Like we said, people went nuts for it, but slowly, the charm faded. The last season failed to hit the mark quite miserably, and fans felt that the story was all over the place. Only 4 million viewers tuned in for the final season, which was the lowest point that the channel could have imagined itself at, especially considering its high-cost budget. Up next, Zaslav finally put the full stop. There wasn't quite enough going on to justify the $160 million budget for Season 4's 8 episodes. In comparison, HBO had just released House of the Dragon with a $125 million budget, and it still managed to attract over 29 million viewers on each episode, that too across all platforms and throughout the season. During a recent investor call, David Zaslav flatly stated that the studio will not engage in projects that did not benefit them. Sadly, Westworld's time ended when his leadership took control. Considering how the show was set for a 6-season run, we'll never know what Dolores' ultimate test for humanity would have been. Coming up, the cast will still be receiving pay though. Wouldn't you all love to just sit around and get handed your paycheck for nothing? Yeah, we'd love that too. We're sure that the cast is devastated at the decision, but as per their contracts, they will still be getting paid for their time. The cast members signed a pay-or-play contract before starting filming for the 5th season of the show, and the contracts are clear about the fact that they'll either work on a season of the show or that they'll get paid for the time they spent in the filming process. Deadline reported that the cast was owed between $10 million and $15 million for Season 5, which gave the concern about how much the last season would cost when production costs were factored in very valid. No wonder HBO thought better than to go on with another season. They would have lost so much money. The final installment in the series would have wrapped things up for sure, and boy, many things needed wrapping up. Too many loose ends have been left unexplained, and we never got to a point where we'd find closure. Even Joanna Robinson admitted that the show ending in Season 4 is very abrupt and has surprised everyone. What's more, she also predicted that HBO may try capitalizing on this abrupt ending by releasing a film version 10 years down the line, explaining things to us hungry fans. Who knows? Now moving on to looking at Westworld Season 5 through our imagination. To start with, it would have probably been based on the sublime. At the end of Season 4, a lot happens, but the simplest way to put it would be, stuff just hits the fan. The entire world dies, or it will eventually die due to entropy. Hale and Dolores begin the Sublime server for the entire AI kind to join so that they could have a second shot at living. They basically want to imitate life on Earth on this server. Excited fans of the show can probably tell that the Sublime season closely resembled heaven, but for robots. Westworld designer Robert Ford created the server space as an afterlife for all host data to go into when they gain awareness. They then have to decide if they want to stay or return to the real world. At the end of the second season, several hosts left their robot bodies and entered the sublime, and we can't blame them. It just sounds so much more exciting than our old, boring Earth. So, we know that all the remaining characters of the show are now on the server, which makes it pretty clear that we would have been in the sublime for a big chunk of the 5th season. You may all have heard your friends or other fans complain about how confusing the show gets at times. It is kind of tough to keep track at times, with a whole season taking place in a virtual reality that has now become the real reality would have probably flown over many heads. Regardless, the challenge is what made the show so interesting. Following up, we could have had a very trippy last season. The entire plot of the show relies on a person's way of thinking. For example, the sublime doesn't really have a fixed identity of its own. It can just take the appearance of whatever you want it to be, which technically is the point behind the server. It's supposed to create an ideal virtual reality that is different from our own reality. Instead of focusing on the sublime, however, we think that the concept of perception itself fascinated the show makers a lot. Since the characters of the show were losing the real tangible world, there was such a wide range of possibilities for what their next world could look like. We got to have real insights into this idea when Joy had an interview after the season 4 finale. She talked about what she had going on in her mind, and it sounded all over the place. But if still managed to be beautiful somehow, she wanted to play around with the idea that humans don't have to be humans. The way we're looked at by society and the way we're used to seeing things around us has all been conditioning since we were young. She also talked about holding on to our true essence, and went on an entire rant about how humans could even just be orbs of light. We could all be shining different colors or singing different notes and be able to connect through these things. Finally, we could have gotten our much-awaited answers. Joy had some really pretty thoughts in her head, and they were all eventually leading up to our answers. She was elaborating on how the concept of being human and its limitations can still be beautiful. But even with all the limitations that we are all born with, we can still find beautiful things to talk about. There was plenty of beauty in the actual world for humans and hosts, but there was also death. Humanity's time has ended as season 4 concluded, and the last hope for its future lay in a fabricated world. If we were to try and read between the lines of Joy's remarks, it seems like she believes that the artificial world provided an opportunity for Westworld to accomplish something for the very first time in its whole run: find some answers. With an entire season based on the concept of what's tangible and what isn't, the show could have really tied up all of its loose ends. And that's a wrap, folks. What do you guys think about HBO's decision to cancel Westworld? Tell us in the comments below, and as always, make sure to click that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on any more updates on your favorite shows. Thank you so much for watching.